All right, I know we're a bit over time, so I will quickly invite the next session. This is the first work stream from Pillar 1. Paul was talking about pillars earlier. The Mojaloop Journey Phase 1, Jane Strokan. Jane?
Morning, everyone. I'm going to digress for 1 minute and ask that all the women in the room stand up. Please. I know there's some women who are outside the room, and we should keep them in mind. Desire, you are a woman. Will you stand, please? And ask that everybody recognize that today is International Women's Day. Yes. And this community is led by a really significant woman who has done fantastic work. Thank you, Paula, for doing that. And it is truly inspiring to see the new women who are joining the community. Here's one that's not standing up. Excuse me. Who are going to be the future of the community, along with the many future men in the community. So I thank you all and wish you all happy International Women's Day. Right, let's get on with business. So, Pillar 1, making adoption easier. Our work stream was about establishing a journey roadmap that would become the go-to place for members, new people, people wanting to understand where they are in the Mojaloop journey. And we consider the Mojaloop journey the expression of how you would move from the starting point of an idea, of ideation, to a live, productionized, live system working in an organization, in a country, or cross countries, hopefully. That is a massive task. So we started off feeling really, maybe I should move this thing on. I have to point it there. There we go. We started off with a really clear objective, which is to develop an outline with important milestones in it for the deployment of a new national or subnational payment system based on Mojaloop. It's very simple. And then we realized when we started breaking down the objectives that this is actually quite a large task to create something that is a tool for the community to use. So we progressed onto, this is the same thing. It was just I did it before Paul's slide arrived, so I don't need to spend time on that. Here we go. Oops, back one, up one, down one. What we decided as a community was we would set certain goals for this PI, and we would try and shape it in such a way, I want to go back one more, that, there we go, that we would conceptually have a high-level page which would be a roadmap-y type view of what the journey would look like. That outline an optimal journey, because as we know, and many of you in this room know, there is no such thing as a single journey, all right? It will deviate on route, it will stumble, it will do all sorts of things, but there is a kind of optimal route. And the next level down would be decision points along that route, and we would have in the roadmap certain tools that would aid the process. So some templates that would guide a person on the journey to thinking about what they would need to consider at that point, or an executive series video which would enable somebody who's talking to new potential deployers to understand from an executive perspective. So multiple levels of documentation tools that would facilitate specific points on that roadmap as they go. Can I click forward again? So for this particular PI, we said we would do a couple of things. We would do a definition of done. What would we consider to be complete? It was a fantastic list about this long. which I have got a screenshot of. Oh, thank you. No? Okay. One back? Somebody's helping me. Thank you. So there was a definition of done. We would create a list, thank you very much, of tools that we know exist in the community, because this is a community effort, and tools that we think would be really important immediately to have. We would identify who the influencers are in the community, and Steve's going to give us his definition, which is really clear of what an influencer is. And we would map. Originally, we thought we would map the whole path, and then we realized, let's take off a bite-sized chunk. We would map the journey to a POC and provide some kind of tool. One of the things we need to do as part of this is have a place to put all of this data. So we are in conversation about creating a GitHub page where we can store all of this stuff. Next, the definition of done. Here it is. As I said to you, it's a massive list. You're welcome. I think Paul Macon has the link to the mural board. You're welcome to go and have a look and read it in detail. It is very detailed. And the definitions will change. As we move through the various pieces of delivery, they will change. A list of tools that we have available. So we've gathered a couple. We have a governance model for schemes. We have the Mojaloop training program. We have a journey map that has been developed already, which we are going to use as reference. And we have a page about the Mojaloop lab. What do we need now? We need the executive series videos. That is a really, really key piece of a tool, yeah. We need to start building out standardized templates for common processes. I see there's a word missing there. And we need community-generated documentation around operations, around definitions of processes that you have discovered and you feel are really important to have. Anything from the community that says, we've spent time, we've developed this, we think it's useful, we can put it into the GitHub repo and we can work through it and turn it into something that is generic rather than specific. So what do the tools look like? This document on that link, and you will all get a copy of this so you can go through the link yourselves, is written by Paul Macon, and it is an example of the components of a scheme and how to set it up. It's a really useful document, it's a really useful tool. Have a look, see what you think. We have the Mojaloop training program. Is there anybody in this room that has never been on to the Mojaloop training program? Not? Okay. Couple. Good. It is probably our most widely used tool, and it is a really amazing tool. So it's something you can go back to regularly because there is always more depth as you go into something and you go back again and you go back again. Go and have a look. It outlines the journey of understanding Mojaloop. Very useful, certainly for a startup and for getting back and thinking, like, what was it that we said about A, B, or C? We have, as I said to you, there is an example of a Mojaloop journey that has been published by Infotex that they have shared with the community. It is on their website. It is very well thought out, obviously not perfect because nothing is perfect. It is well thought out. It is descriptive of various stages of the route through to developing a POC or a go-live situation. And there are many pieces of information in that describe what you require at those specific points. Very useful. Go and have a look at that. Then there is a link to another page which describes how to interrogate the API, how to create an environment with support. Everyone knows the Mojaloop Foundation has Miniloop available. There's a testing harness. There are various platforms that can be used to get in and play around, feel around, discover. That's an available tool as well. The link is there as well. See, it's been cut off a bit. I must just check that. I'm not sure why. Next. Oh dear. There we go. There is also a Mojaloop FinTech sandbox that is being developed. It's a very exciting new initiative that was initiated by the foundation. The details will be published by the foundation, so if you're looking for more info, speak to Simeon, speak to Steve, speak to Desire, speak to Paula. They have all the data. They're going to announce it and publish it, but that will be a FinTech sandbox. They will manage the processes, the access, the rules and regulations and all of that good stuff around what you can do, can't do on that sandbox and when it can be spun up and etc. But please speak to them. They will make an official announcement sometime in the near future, Steve. Yeah? Yeah. So those are all the available tools that we currently have or are right about there. Who are the community influencers? Now I'm going to get Steve to just give us a view on that, if you will.
And this is going to be kind of relatively brief, I think. Most of you there's a lot of people in this room. Some of you are developers and engineers. Some of you are central bankers. Some of you are scheme owners, scheme operators. But there is a class of people that the process of setting up a scheme, no matter who you are, usually involves a guide or and let's call them what they are, payment system consultants. And there's a number of you in this room who at some point or another have been payment system consultants, who are the ones who come in for a couple of months and help guide through, or even a year, and help guide an adopter through the process of setting up a system. And I'm looking at some amazing ones we have here. We've got Jacques, whereas Innocent Ephraim. So some of you know, some of you have been guided by them. These are what we're defining as influencers, the people who are there to help guide the process in an independent way. And largely, what we're looking for is that we want to make their job easier to guide adopters on a path of creating a scheme. So that they have all the tools and things that they need, and that can make it so that, one small group of influencers, of a couple of consultants, could actually help 10 schemes at the same time because they have all the tools that they need. They don't need to recreate the wheel every single time. So that's what our goal is here. So we're very much looking forward to working with those. So any of you who are scheme owners or potential adopters who've worked with consultants in the past that you've been very impressed with, that you think are of the mindset that they would want to participate, please point them our way. And if any of you do that for a living, please also come. This is a tool that we think you will be the primary users of. The one point that I want to make on this is, I made a point of how excited I am that there are a lot of non-engineers in the room. But one thing I'll say for the engineers, they are really good at sharing in an open source world. The rest of us are not. So GitHub and the way we use open source coding is very, very effective. But those of us who work on the more soft side of things are not as effective. And this is one of the challenges we've had throughout this process. We thought it was going to be a relatively easy pillar. Been very difficult because these are things that people normally don't share and collaborate and iterate on. They're often things that are done that somebody gets paid to build this thing each and every time. And so this is what we are very much looking for: influencers, consultants who have that mindset of, no, we should build a toolbox that is reusable. It means I can serve more clients, but it probably means I'm going to get paid a little bit less for each one. And so, yeah. That's my call for those of you who know good influencers who would want to take part in this. Good.
Thank you. And just to add to that, what we're looking for from those participants is what would make their journeys easier. What is the content they don't have yet or would need in this toolbox? Because we don't always know those things. But if they came and said, you know what, if I could have the to do this with, that's what we're looking for. So great, yeah. And lastly, to map the path to a POC. So after much deliberation about how fantastic we are and how quickly we'll just do this roadmap and get it sorted for everyone in one PI, we realized let's start with a good agile approach and start with a POC and map how to get to a POC We'll move through all of these now, and I'm going to hand back to Steve because he's got some slides that follow here about the work that we've done here and how it links with some conversations we had yesterday. Go ahead.
So yeah, one of the things that we're trying to do to make sure we can actually move forward on this is, as we discovered it was too big, and we ran into what happens very often when you have a big task is we didn't do very much because we didn't know where to start. So we're trying to narrow our scope specifically to the path to the POC. And this is why we had that panel yesterday. So this is, so looking at achieving a path to a POC based off the definitions that Afazad helped us with yesterday around technical POC to show the messaging can happen and all the stakeholders are aligned, pilot that shows actual real money is possible and what are the final things we need to check to make sure it's working, and then a full live deployment. And we think those are going to be separate paths, if you would. And so some of the things we talked about yesterday was first we need to define and identify who are the key stakeholders. The governance of how those stakeholders work together seemed to be a key message that came out of that conversation yesterday, as well as the learning objectives, which is really focused in the POC on what information and learnings are still required in order to make a decision. We don't want a potential adopter to sit there and have Mojaloop like running around in their head. Are we going to do this? Are we not? Are we going to do this? Let's do a POC. Let's learn everything you need to know very, very quickly. And then you can make the decision if this is the route that you want to go on, or you want to go on a route of a proprietary system. And so those are some of the things that have come out of we should come out of the POC. And some potential learning objectives that some of the things we heard yesterday. Can banks and non-banks easily connect to each other? What's the impact of a non-bank on non-bank operations? A lot of institutions are not used to doing instant payments 24/7. They're going to have to change. What does that really mean? Maybe the only way they learn that is through a POC, and maybe that's the important next step that you want to learn as a scheme owner. How does security work? This comes up very often. Our security is very different from the way a lot of bankers are used to seeing it work, and so it's very important to actually see that in a POC. Some of the operational processes like settlement windows, all the things that are done in the business operations framework are often very important for a hub operator to see in a POC. And then also importantly, which I think those of you who saw Monday, how quickly can local engineers and system integrators get ramped up on their skills in Mojaloop? That's going to help guide the thinking of how much time do I need? What's the runway if I'm going to implement this by myself that I want to give my ecosystem to be able to actually do this all yourself? So those are just some of the questions that we've been hearing might be something you'd want to put in a POC. But again, this is not an exhaustive list. And so yeah, anyone who's currently thinking about doing a POC, we would love to get your input of what you would like to learn, and that will be contributed back into the standard POC that we want to design. Okay?
Thank you.
I'll let you deal with that.
Thank you. So, yes, Amish. Yeah. Yes.
So as the Mojaloop community grows, more and more deployments will come up.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see the concept of POC, or just even the need of POC if you have several deployments?
Can you ask the question with the mic? Sorry.
Yeah, the online audience, yeah. My question is, with more Mojaloop deployments being live and demonstrated, do you see the path to POC changing, or even just the question whether you do need a POC at all in some places? Could that change? If there are more deployments, then we may not need to go to a POC.
So I'm going to let Steve answer because I can see he's itching too, but I'm going to answer in the meantime. From my perspective, the answer simply is no. There is an ever-evolving need for different use cases, different settings, different participants, different tweaks and changes. So a POC is a proof of concept. So somebody's going to come up with a concept all the time that they're not sure, they're not convinced that this thing will provide them. So a proof of concept is literally, without all the other fab things around it, can I make this thing actually work? So I don't imagine there will ever be, because the world changes fast, you know. Sorry, Steve?
But I think it's a valid question, though, Ahmed. I think that as we do more POCs, I mean, At this stage, because we don't have a lot of deployments, to be frank, a lot of people want a POC just to prove that Mojaloop is a real thing, that it's not just vaporware. Now, ideally, we're going to get past that very quickly when we have more deployments, and we don't have to prove that to people anymore. But then it's a matter of going back to the list of things that I said of what do we need to prove for our particular scheme. And some of those, actually, the more deployments we have, maybe some of those answers will already be out there where they can say, well, these 5 schemes, like, we know it takes 4 months and this much money to get system integrators up to running, and we don't need to really worry about that because we know that. But on the other hand, maybe locally there's still people you need to prove that to. So I agree with Jane. I don't think it's going to change that much, but I think that we're hopefully going to be able to refine it to the point where for this particular adopter, these are the things they really want to prove for themselves and for their scheme. Michael?
And while Michael's getting the things, so there will be, hopefully at that point, there will be instances where someone comes up with a question and we can say to them, go and have a look at that scheme. It's proving the point, right? Michael.
Sorry, I just wanted to build on what Steve has said while agreeing with it. And it seems to me that one of the things that we're not very good at the moment, and an area where we could improve, hopefully through this initiative, is when people do things, when schemes do things to solve particular problems that they have, one of the things that they don't typically do at the moment is publish something that says, here is the problem that we had, and here is how we solved it. Now, I'm thinking particularly about the work that we did with the WinePay folks, for instance, about supporting a situation where one party in a transfer wanted to pay the fees of the other party in the transfer. Now, that's not something that's very obvious how to do that in Mojaloop, and we kind of cudgeled our brains for a couple of weeks. Well, actually, other people cudgeled their brains, I didn't. But eventually we wound up with a solution that fitted in and said, here's how you do it without having to make any changes to core Mojaloop at all. And the way to ice that cake, I think, is to say, here is how you solve this particular problem in a way that people can look at it and say, oh, okay, I know now how to do that if I need to, that kind of thing.
I just want to say, excellent, in 1 second, great point on the publishing those learnings. That is actually something we will be talking about. If we're going to be supporting and working with any of you on a POC, then yeah, you can foresee that publishing your learnings is going to be a requirement of us helping you with that.
Yeah.
So.
And part of the document repository here around each subject matter, like a POC, will include those kind of things. It's a good point.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm Mahmoud from the Commercial Clearinghouse. Our experience has been very varied, and maybe it's good to share with you. When you talk about POC and you're moving ultimately towards one model, we find that this may not, one cap fits all will probably not work for all of us. We have 21 member countries, each one, and this is where Comesa, we use what we call variable geometry approach. That as and when a country is ready, it joins the system. So, but coming up with one model, even with your POC, then ultimately harmonizing might be the ultimate goal. But that might take years, that might take a decade to have it. So my point is that there are very specific factors, variables in each of our member states, which has to be taken into account. What prevails in Burundi is not the same as what prevails in Rwanda. The system that Burundi will want will be totally different from what Rwanda is looking at. Ethiopia will want. Djibouti will have a different system. So probably in your approach, in terms of the POC and moving forward, you may need to inbuild that we have variable geometry approach, that as and when you are ready, that we are able to. But we can start the work now, get your specifications and what you require. But what is more complex, maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow on Thursday, about cross-border, which is really, really a headache. At the national level, it's fine because you're dealing with one jurisdiction. And when we talk about payment system, most of our member states have got a dual authorization process. The central banks is involved only with commercial banks, not non-bank institutions, which are licensed by a different authority, and therefore responsible and liable to that particular authority. And then when you look at payment systems cross-border, any cross-border payment system has to go through the central bank. So these are some of the things that we will discuss either today or tomorrow and see what will be the best. So my point was that if we look at these different scenarios, then it will probably be something that we can work with. Thank you.
Excellent point. Thank you very much.
And I just want to say not only tomorrow, but welcome to the Mojaloop community. We expect you to be working with us
many
on
years.
this for the next decade.
Any other questions or comments before we wrap up? I'm being given a glare from my right-hand side here. Thank you very much. I would like to say that, in my view, this is a really, really important work stream, and contributions are welcome. So if you want to be part of it, if you want to join us, if you want to send us something and say, see if you can use this, my email address is very simple. Find it, send it to Steve, join us. Thank you very much.